Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I would like to call to order the December 7 San Francisco Airport Community Roundtable meeting at 7:01 p.m. We are meeting via Zoom, and joining us today are staff of the Roundtable, Kathleen Wentworth, Roundtable Coordinator, Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Secretary, Jeanette Lujan, Executive Secretary, San Mateo County Planning Department, Jean Reindale, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH. We also have Lisa Awazasa, Deputy Director, Planning and Building Department, County of San Mateo. And now I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Wentworth. If you would please tell us other participants who should be recognized. Kathleen?
Yes, also with us tonight is Carlette Young, who is the FAA Acting Supervisory Senior Advisor, who will be joining us for the meeting in place of Fabi. In addition, we have Linda Rowland, Senior Legislative Aide to Supervisor Pine, as well as Brian Perkins, Senior Policy Advisor to Congresswoman Jackie Spear. I also see Doug Yackel, who is an alternate to the Roundtable, and I also see Paul Hanna, who's the Consultant and Chief Airspace and Flight Operations Engineer at SFO, and Christian Valdez, SFO Consultant on the GBAS program. And Angela, did I miss anybody? I think that's it. The rest are our members to be introduced down the road. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And just a reminder, tonight we will start the enhanced Zoom features, what that means is we will periodically share the name of the attendees. The list of names will display the name, but not the email address entered by each person when signing into the Zoom meeting. Moving on to roll call, Ms. Wentworth, would you please proceed with the
Certainly.
Roll call.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. No response. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. No response. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Ivar here.
Good evening. San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. SeaCac Airport Land Use Commission. I know I saw Carol.
Carol, yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Welcome. Town of Atherton. No response. City of Belmont told us he would be absent tonight. City of Belmont, no response. City of Brisbane. No response. City of Burlingame. Town of Colma.
John Goodwin here.
City of Daly City.
Pamela DiGiovanni, present.
Thank you. City of East Palo Alto. City of Foster City.
I'm here.
City of Half Moon Bay.
Harvey Rohrbeck.
Good evening. Town of Hillsborough. I know I saw. Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce, you're on mute. Mr. Royce. All right. Angela, would you ping him on his phone? Continuing on, we'll come back to Hillsborough. If that's okay with you folks. City of Menlo Park.
Taylor, present.
Good evening. City of Millbrae.
Ed Schneider, present.
Thank you. City of Pacifica.
Mike O'Neill, present.
Good evening. Town of Portola Valley. Town of Portola Valley. No response. City of Redwood City. City of Redwood City. No response. City of San Bruno.
Tom Hamilton here.
Good evening. City of San Carlos. City of San Carlos, no response. City of San Mateo. City of San Mateo, no response. City of South San Francisco.
Mark Adiego here.
Thank you. Town of Woodside. Town of Woodside, no response. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Almost one. Oh,
Through
wait.
the chair, I
Excuse-
think, did you see Dave Pine?
Yeah, hi Kathleen, I'm on. Dave
Oh,
Pine.
wonderful. San Mateo County Board of Supervisors is present. Al Royce, are you present?
Present.
Okay. Angela, do you concur we have 13?
Yes, and member G just joined us as well. I'm promoting him now.
Okay. At the
And
moment, we have a quorum, and we will also be expecting Mr. G from River City.
yeah, and I believe Al is having audio issues. He cannot hear us, unfortunately.
Angela, I just got him
Oh.
corrected.
Oh, there we go. Welcome.
Hello,
Thank
Mr. Royce. And we show you present, Mr. Royce, and we show Mr. G. Mr. G, are you present?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Wonderful, welcome. All right, so, Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wentworth, and thank you everyone for joining us. And moving on to the next item, public comments. This is the segment of the meeting where members of the public who would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda, that would be the time to do so. Please raise your virtual hand and Ms. Montes will take it from here, how you would participate in this segment of the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. And we are displaying a list of our attendees at the meeting for your interest. And for those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature in order to organize any public comments. During the general public comment periods, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your microphone and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. And Chairman, I do see a couple hands raised. Give me 1 second so I can now share my, oh, they went away. So we have no hands raised for items not on the agenda, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Jennifer's hand earlier, but I guess she put it down. But anyway, thank you. Here, so see Jennifer hand again.
Oh, okay. Hold on 1 second. I will call on. Ms. Landisman.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, thanks. I sort of wasn't sure whether I should comment on this regarding the ground-based meeting that happened recently. I had joined that meeting because Jean Randall was presenting and there was going to be some comments about legislative issues. And what I wanted, what I had mentioned at that meeting is that Jean did a great presentation on an educational series at the LAX Roundtable about all the statutes. And he mentioned that in an industry forum, the FAA shared some of the changes that they'll be making as a result of their noise policy review. And I was kind of hoping that maybe Jean could share what he heard. And if not, you know, this is a lot of really important information in terms of the FAA doing this noise policy review and already having items that they have decided they're going to move on. So if the FAA person is here today, maybe she or he could comment and give us an update on what's happening with the noise policy review. And I really hope that somewhere in the course of this discussion, maybe there could be a question from the roundtable as to, you know, what the status is of this effort We learned about it also at the UC Davis Symposium in May, and we know that it's been going on. We just would like to have an update and have equal access to the information that was received at this industry forum so that citizens can also know what the FAA is planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landesman. And Chairman, we do not have any other hands raised for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. So I will go ahead and close public comments for this item and moving on to the next item, which is setting the agenda and approving the consent agenda, which includes item 2, resolution adopting for remote meetings. Staff will note but not read any written comments and allow members of the public to speak. Ms. Montes? Wait a minute, what am I doing? Do we have any member of the public who would like to speak on the agenda?
Through the chair, were you asking for public?
Sure.
I know that tonight is Mike O'Neill from Pacifica's last night as he is stepping off council. I don't know if we have any other council members who will be stepping down. Just if at the end we can notice them. It's not on the agenda. I was going to bring it up under comments, but
I do have that in my comment. Thank you for bringing
excellent.
that
Thank you.
up to my attention. But let me see if I have any members of the public who have any comments or would like to comment on anything on the consent.
Thank you, Chairman. I do not see any virtual hands raised for the consent agenda items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much with that. And I'm going to go ahead and ask members of the roundtable if they have anything that they would like to pull out of the consent or make any comments. If not, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by member G and second by member O'Neill. Ms. Wentworth, would you please take the roll call?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Yes.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
CCAC, Airport Land
Yes.
Use.
Yes.
Town of Atherton is absent. City of Belmont is absent. City of Brisbane is absent. City of Burlingame. City of Burlingame. Town of Colma.
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
on the motion, on the consent agenda motion,
Yes. Aye.
I think you said yes. You're
Yes.
muted, but you said yes. Okay. City of Daly City.
Aye.
City of Daly City, Ms.
Aye.
Giovanni.
Pardon me through the
Aye,
chair.
yes.
Kathleen, I am hearing the ayes from both members. I wonder
not
if you're
hearing you.
having audio issues.
City of Daly City, Ms. Giovanni.
Aye.
I'll come
Yes.
back to that.
Aye. No, yes. Yes.
I
City of
believe,
East Palo Alto,
I believe Ms. Wentworth has probably lost her audio.
City of Foster City.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Kathleen, are you able to hear us?
I wonder if I'm,
Okay. So
I may be having problems hearing you guys.
Angela, are you able to conduct the roll
Yeah.
call?
Angela, can you take over the roll call from starting with the city of Foster City?
Yes, City of Foster City,
I'm
Yes.
not hearing anybody.
City of Half Moon Bay,
Yes.
Town of Hillsborough,
Yes.
City of Menlo Park,
Yes.
City of Millbrae,
Yes.
City of Pacifica,
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley is absent. City of Redwood City,
Yes.
City of San Bruno,
Yes.
City of San Carlos is absent. City of San Mateo is absent. City of South San Francisco
Yes.
And Town of Woodside, it's absent. Thank you, Chair. Your motion passes.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Montez.
Bailey City is a yes. Angela?
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Member Giovanni.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. While Kathleen gets her audio back up, the next item basically is going to be presentation by Kathleen. Let me see what we got. Kathleen, can you hear us? Okay, so I think she's logging out to log back in. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and proceed kind of presenting the introduction of the item that, like I said, it's gonna be presented by Kathleen. So moving on, item number 4 on the agenda. The next item is an action item to consider whether to approve the unanimous recommendation from the technical working group to refer 10 GBAS 2A innovative procedures suggestions to the roundtable for approval to submit them to the SFO GBAS team for their consideration. At the November meeting, the technical working group reviewed the 10 suggestions for possible GBAS innovative flight procedure. After questions and discussions, the technical working group unanimously recommended that all 10 of these suggestions be forwarded to the full roundtable for consideration and vote on whether to submit them to the SFO GBAS team. As you know, the SFO GBAS team continues to work towards future innovative ideas for routing arriving planes in a quieter manner. Today, we will discuss this group of 10 suggestions and decide if any, some, or all of these should be submitted to the SFO GBAS team as possible future GBAS innovative procedures. All of these suggestions are arrivals to SFO. Since GBAS technology is designed only for arriving airplanes, some of these suggestions are modest, but are more likely to be doable. Some of these suggestions are more ambitious, but still within reach. It is important to note that these suggestions are not presented as fully vetted or analyzed flight procedures. The GBAS team has repeatedly told us that they want concepts, ideas, suggestions that they can adapt, modify, and transform into their own workable GBAS flight procedure. Our role today is not to determine if these suggestions are technically feasible. If the SFO GBAS team decides to design a procedure based on any of these 10 suggestions, or any suggestion from anyone from the public, any GBAS procedure finally proposed will be subject to all applicable FAA regulations and processes, as well as SFO processes, including presentation to the SFO roundtable for its review. We will take member questions after each numbered suggestion or group of suggestions is presented. That is, after suggestion 1, after 2, which has 3 parts, 2A, 2B, 2C, and after 3, which has, again, 3 parts, 3A, 3B, and 3C, and so forth. Ms. Wentworth will basically work very hard on these, and like I said, the technical working group discussed them in details, and the recommendation for the roundtable to deliberate on them and make a vote whether to recommend any or all of them. Is Kathleen with us back again?
She is not, Chairman. I did get a message from her suggesting if we can move on to the first presentation item while she gets resituated.
Okay, so let me then pause on this item, and then moving on to the next item on the agenda. We'll come back to Kathleen after the presentation. Presentation, let me go on and say, Angela, would you like to kind of put a list of the attendees just as another reminder who is with us on the attendee list while I go ahead and talk about this a little bit. Presentation, as a matter of clarification, public comments on any of the items under presentation will be taken after the last presentation. Moving on to item 5, which is the chairman update. I would like to let you all know, give you a heads up, that beginning March 1, 2022, the regular roundtable meetings and subcommittee meetings will return to the in-person format. The regular roundtable meetings will return to the Shachusi room courtesy of the city of Melbury, and MCTV will provide technical audio and video services. For roundtable regular meetings, we intend to supplement the in-person meetings with an option for the public and only for the public to participate remotely. We also intend that our subcommittee meetings will meet in suitable meeting rooms equipped for hybrid meetings. Previously, subcommittee meetings were not always recorded. We intend to record the subcommittee meetings and also offer remote participation for the public. Do any members of the roundtable have any questions on the chairman update? I see none. Okay, with that, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next item, number 6, which is the airport director update with Mr. Sotero, then followed by Mr. Ganong, airport noise office manager. We'll turn it over to airport director, Mr. Sotero, to give us an update.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you, Sam. A couple things to update everyone on. Is my audio okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Let's see. First thing is Wall Street Journal named SFO the #1 airport in their annual survey. We were #1 in the large hub ranking, and they looked at 19 different factors. In particular, our score in the JD Power, we were #2 in JD Power around outstanding customer satisfaction, as well as on-time performance and other factors. And so really pleased with the work of staff and the acknowledgement of the great work of the SFO team. Environmental acknowledgements as well. Harvey Milk Terminal 1 continues to be just really well received from a environmental stewardship perspective. It's the first terminal in the world to achieve the new LEED Platinum certified standard, and also the first in the world to achieve well building certification. This is around the interior environment and the health and well-being of the occupants based on material selections and operational characteristics. Passenger traffic updates. We expect to see about 5 billion travelers through SFO from Thanksgiving to New Year's. That's about 85% of the 2019 holiday season. Through Thanksgiving, we saw about 82% of the pre-pandemic levels. Number of new and resuming flights coming up. Air India will launch service to Mumbai 3 times a week, starting next week on a 777, arriving at 5 p.m., departing at 9 p.m. Alaska Airlines resumes Cancun daily on December 15th as well with a 737, 11 p.m. arrival and departs at 10:25 a.m. Alaska also resuming once a week to Mazatlan and Laredo on a 737, arrives at 6 p.m., departs at 10:30 a.m. United Airlines resuming Osaka 3 times a week, starting in early January on a 777, arriving 11:20 a.m., departing 11:05 a.m. Both United and ITA, flag carrier of Italy, have announced plans to fly nonstop to Rome next year. United launches daily flights on May 23rd using a 777. We are awaiting the schedule for that. And ITA launches 5 times a week in July on an A350, also still awaiting the schedule for that. We are resuming portions of our capital plan that were suspended. As everyone may recall, we suspended about $2 billion of construction, and we are reinitiating the majority of that work, in particular finishing Harvey Milk Terminal 1, and that provides that connectivity throughout the horseshoe of SFO post-security, and so provides a more seamless connecting operation. Excuse me. We're also looking at a framework for future capital investment, and as we develop the plan, we're working on about a 10 to 15-year horizon. We will provide that to the roundtable members. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sotero. Definitely a lot of good news. Congratulations on being rated #1, and Terminal 1, the LEED Platinum, definitely is something to be proud of. Great work by all your team. Thank you so much for your presentation. Let me see if any members of the roundtable have any questions for Director Sotero. I see a couple hands, Member O'Neill first.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations on all the awards. But I just became aware of something called ANEEM, ANEEM, which has been in Washington, D.C., I guess, for several years. And I guess it's a way of tracking noise down to the actual individual plane that's making the noise. So it's almost a way to audit what airlines are the noisiest, what planes are the noisiest, or whatever. And I was wondering when that is going to be, implemented at SFO, and then the results and the monitoring made public to the roundtable and the public.
Thanks. Maybe I can refer to Doug on this, or Bert.
I'd be happy to answer, Director. Mr. O'Neill, we have been addressing the ANEEM topic for some time now, and we're getting ready to release that in our portable reports here. The third quarter reports will be coming out early in the new year. And we have a year's worth of ANEEM data for all of our noise monitoring sites that are not what we call Title 21 noise monitoring sites. You may have recalled some of the discussions we've had at the roundtable over that. The state of California does require that we have a set threshold, which ANEEM does not use. And so we have to do that to comply with the state for the 12 monitors that we've selected for that.
Okay, so it's now going to be part of your regular report?
We will put that in our director's reports, as well as C-weighted, which is a request as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I had an email from somebody about that. So thank you.
We're on it. We're on it.
Thank you, Member O'Neill. Moving on to Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. The city of Millbrae, both our city manager and myself, commented on the draft EIR for SFO sea level rise plan. And I think we're still trying to figure out if it goes only to the Planning Commission or goes to the Board of Supervisor for approval. But I would request that we have a report at our next full roundtable. My reading, and I only read Reach 12 to Reach 16 on that, which is basically from around runway 28 to Millbrae and along there. But it only talks about construction-based noise. It doesn't talk about what noise will come when these 9-foot tall steel walls that are 5 feet apart and filled with grout, and more gravel is added, more riprap, and additional road width is added all the way around, basically the portions that touch onto the wetlands or the mud flats of Millbrae and Burlingame, and that in the Reach 13 through 14, possibly 12, the current EIR is going to fill 5 acres of mud flats. And so there's no discussion of those actions and what they might do to the noise to the close-in communities at all, unless I missed it in the ER, and I've got a couple of our planning commissioners reviewing it in detail. Can you give us an update of what the SFO sea level rise work is going to do in terms of noise? Not the construction noise, which means for Millbrae up until 2031 or 32 or 33, the use of Site 7, what you call Adrian, or what you call Aviador lot, is a constant 24/7 noise source. So, I mean, I don't know if the airport can address that right now. Where was the study of the noise?
Certainly not prepared to address that now, but I'll talk to staff and we'll present what's appropriate at an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Pine.
Ivar, you mentioned that passenger volumes are up about almost 85% now, 85–90% of pre-COVID. Are the number of flights similar, or are we just seeing more people on bigger planes?
Yeah, the flight activity is at about 65%, Supervisor. It is a function of the planes the load factors are higher. So we're seeing about 90% load factors. They're flying larger planes. The small ones really haven't returned to service because pilot shortage is causing airlines to rethink their piloting strategy of aircraft. And we, SFO, benefits from that because of the kinds of market we serve. So yeah, you're correct. Operations are down, even though passengers are up. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 2 years. And the pilot shortage and the aircraft shortage, is it a trend that continues? I believe it is a trend that continues for at least the next year, maybe year and a half. It's just uncertain what happens after that.
Okay, that's helpful. I wouldn't have guessed that the delta was so large.
Thank you. Member Schneider, you still have your hand up, or you have another question?
Yes, just point of clarification. If indeed the planes are getting bigger and heavier, I know it never seems to matter on noise shifting, but that means the smaller planes don't direct that much low frequency noise up into Millbrae or the Burlingame Hillsborough Hills, but the larger planes do. So that could explain why my people, I can't speak for the other 2 cities, are experiencing considerable new noise and louder noise and later into the night. So that is a noise shift.
I would be surprised by that because it's not more larger aircraft. That's not what's happening. It's just the smaller aircraft haven't returned, and the aircraft that have always flown into SFO continue to fly into SFO, but with more passengers. So I don't believe there are more large aircraft flying into SFO.
Thank you, Mr. Satara. Okay, anything else from Mr. Satara from members of the roundtable? Seeing none, again, Mr. Satara, thank you and congratulations on all the achievement that you have, and happy holidays to you. Okay, moving on to airport noise manager, Mr. Ganong.
Thank you. Let's see, we'll go ahead and share a screen here. Making sure you're seeing a title slide here. Thank you.
We do.
So I wanted to first address our noise insulation program update. We gave a similar slide last month. I'll go through real quick.
Pardon me, Bert. Are you able to put that in presentation mode in full screen?
Are you seeing this screen here?
Yeah, we could see your next slide. And
Okay, that's what I was asking, if you saw the title slide.
Oh, yes.
Let's reverse this here.
Much better.
Okay, very good. So it's funny, I actually selected the opposite and then the other one showed, so apologize. Anyway, the total applications received, we have 1 additional this month. The current units in construction, you'll see the number went down because we have added 20 units that were constructed, raising that number to 59. Homeowner satisfaction rates 82.50. The going to the second chance in the right column, another application was received there. We dropped 6 on the current units in design, and the current units out for bid are 29 still, but the units in construction went up by 4. So we have that going on. 64 constructed, and we did go up just a little bit in our satisfaction rate there. So pleased to announce that. And then last month, we did speak to the Second Chance Initiative and completion of that with a total budget of $3 million, split between the $2.4 million FAA grant, $600,000 of SFO funds, approximately 19 eligible homes that have never been treated. We do have notes that apply to both of these at the bottom, and that regard boils down to homes within the 65 decibel noise contour, and then subject to site inspections, acoustical tests to determine eligibility. Only properties with the interior average noise level greater than 45 dB and meeting all FAA eligibility requirements can receive the treatment. So we're held to that, and we have to run the program that way to be able to get the grant funding, which is most helpful to be able to do that. Looking at the pre-1993, and oops, I see a typo there, so need to correct that before I hand it over. But the new initiative we mentioned last month with the FAA in fiscal year 2022, and SFO being one of the first airports to get this new type of grant. Total budget's $12 million, $9.6 million in the form of a grant, $2.4 million from the SFO funds, and it's going to replace the installation of 80 to 100 eligible homes previously insulated before 1993. Again, the note does apply. And the outreach efforts, we've sent invitations to owners of 97 potentially eligible properties in late October. And for the owners that will accept the invitation, we'll schedule the pre-construction and acoustical test to determine their eligibility. Moving on, we are going to, we have, done our Title 21 quarterly noise reports provided to the Roundtable from 2009 to 2016, as we had said we would. We are going, which is where I was headed with that statement, to complete our Noise Office website update. We're looking for some real big changes that will be most helpful to the community, and some real big updates to our noise insulation program. GBAS plan to bring any of the flight procedures through the that were reviewed by the Flight Procedures Subcommittee. If they have any questions, we'll bring those back to the January 9th Technical Working Group meeting. And then any concepts that advance through that group and go on to become community flight procedure packets, we'll present those at the March 2023 Technical Working Group meeting. The Roundtable did ask that we track non-conforming night hush flights, and so we'll report on that in just a moment. But I did want to quickly run over these flights here that you're looking at are between 1 and 5 a.m. and SFO only. And again, it's between May 19th, when this was put into effect, and the end of November. We looked at 1,706 flights that you see here on the screen. And if we took out the 1,072 that went west on a gap departure, needing the longer runways and going to Asia, things like that, Australia, that left us with 644 flights that we're going to analyze. The 143 of those flights used departures over the peninsula, such as the Stick and the Gap domestic, that could have used overwater departures, but 501 did use the overwater departures, such as the Night 050, which is that right turn from the runway over the bay, going down the bay, or another departure, which means that we're looking at about 78% being overwater. So really good figure. And I know that some of you out there are going, yeah, but what was it before? So we looked at January through May, and we were looking at 65% being over water, so much more over land. So this program is working, and we're looking at numbers going higher. And then to answer the question of non-conforming flights and what we're doing about them, we started that documenting it in September. So wanted to lay out here what we're doing. We're looking at the flights that did the stick or didn't perform well as far as doing something that was a really early turn from the night, things like that. And so you can see here that we're investigating about half of them still, waiting for feedback from the airlines. Some of the airlines are slow in coming back to us. I know United says we're still investigating it, but I do know that United's digging into it on their own. And they're actually trying to help us by getting some information posted with the TRACON and working with us to get information posted. The pilots will be able to see this on their charts. And so it'll help out and not be something out of the blue coming at a pilot who's not familiar with the airport. And that would be all of my presentation this evening. Do you have any questions for the chair?
Thank you so much, Mr. Ganong. And just as a reminder to everyone that the information that the SFO will go to get investigating the non-compliance, if you will, take some time, and because of the source that they are getting. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. With that, let me go to Roundtable members if they have any questions or comments on your presentation. I see Member O'Neill.
Bert, I'm sure you're aware every city in California is being required to increase housing and build more housing units, etc. Has there been any outreach from the airport to the cities to inform areas that are within the 65 decibels that maybe they need higher insulation or more insulation? Or has there been any outreach from the airport to address that issue?
There's been quite a bit of outreach, particularly with cities that are building within the noise contour or really close to it. You may have heard of the San Bruno projects and some of the other cities nearby that were building, and the airport's comments on those for the Airport Land Use Committee.
Okay, I just want to be sure that that was happening because I hadn't heard of anything. I just want to be sure it was happening. Thank you, Bert.
There's a lot out there.
Okay, great. Anybody else? I don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Ganong, and happy holidays to you as well.
No, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, HMMH presentation. And with us is...
Pardon me, Chairman. I believe Kathleen is back on. And
Is she?
may be
Okay.
ready- she may be ready for her to go back to her presentation item.
Okay. Kathleen, are you ready, or would you rather me go to HMMH?
I'd love to have another few minutes to get all the documents in line.
No problem. No worries. Take your time, get everything ready, and we'll move on to item number 7. We have asked HMMH to periodically report to us on activities of other aviation roundtables in the country. We hope to learn from their successes and find opportunities to build on those successes in our own efforts here at the SFO Roundtable. Mr. Randall, if you are ready, please go ahead and proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you seeing the beginning slide here? Just making sure.
We are now,
Full
yes.
screen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
You're welcome. So as the chairman indicated, I was asked to present updates periodically on activities of other roundtables. This is the first of such, so these aren't really updates necessarily. It's meant to introduce you to other roundtables, similar to the San Francisco roundtable, and some of the actions that they've done recently with those roundtables. And there's several of them to go through. I intend after this time that they would be actually updates and not as rigorous or as lengthy as this one, but the information I believe is included in the packet, so you can also go back and refer to it. I will tend to skip over some things, knowing that the information is all there available to you, and kind of hit the highlights for each of the separate roundtables. And I can certainly take questions after the presentation from the members. So the first one, and I put these actually in alphabetical order, wasn't sure how to organize them. So the first one is the Broward County Aviation Department Airport Noise Abatement Committee, or also known as ANAC. They are essentially in South Florida, Southeast Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood International Airport specifically. They have been around this committee for quite some time. I don't have the actual date that they started, but really focused here on Metroplex procedures that were implemented in 2021. The ANAC members requested that the FAA assign and pilots use the RNAV procedures as much as possible because they see them as being beneficial to their communities. And the aviation department met with the FAA and representative airlines, including chief pilots, to discuss the procedures and increasing the usage. As you see there, all participants noted their preference is to use the RNAV, whether it's the FAA or the airlines, because it benefits them as well. But they, according to ANAC, are still showing relatively low usage, less than 70% for departures and less than 40% for arrivals. And they would like to see upwards in the 90s in percentile if they could, in percentages rather, if they could. So the aviation department will continue to reach out to the FAA and airlines to try to increase those. So that's what's going on there. The next one is the Charlotte Douglas International Airport Community Roundtable, also known as the ACR. This was convened in 2017 at the request of the FAA to consider how to address community noise concerns and to provide recommendations to the FAA for potential changes to operations, aircraft operations. And in 2020, so a little over 2 years ago, the ACR put forth a slate of 6 recommendations for FAA consideration, 3 arrival procedures and 3 departure procedures. FAA requested that the 3 departure procedures be analyzed as part of the upcoming Part 150, which recently got started. And the ACR does have representation on the Technical Advisory Committee to that Part 150 program, which is an airport noise compatibility planning process. FAA is currently in the design process to raise arrival altitudes on all the downwind legs of the arrivals. And if this is successful, it would actually eliminate one of the other 2 arrival recommendations. And the FAA is at this time currently unable to implement the request to use continuous descent or optimized profile descent on arrivals at a greater percentage at this time for the airport. The next one is the DC Metroplex, which is part of the Baltimore, Washington, Thurgood Marshall International Airport. Again, this is surrounding Metroplex. The FAA began its phased implementation of the Metroplex there in February 2014. And the FAA, due to adverse community reaction to the implementation of the new flight procedures, the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Aviation Administration established a roundtable to address those issues, which was formed in 2017. And it was really formed to work with MDOT, MAA, FAA, and airlines to disperse operations, keep aircraft higher longer, and relieve populated areas by relocation of flight paths. They, in 2019, that is the roundtable, submitted a package of proposed flight procedure changes to the FAA's working group, or PBN working group. It is worth noting that there was nearly a 2-year delay in engagement with the FAA due to lawsuits filed by the state of Maryland and also the pandemic. In August of 2022, the FAA presented proposed RNAV procedures that required modifications to those recommended by the roundtable, and the roundtable unanimously voted in favor of the proposed changes by the FAA, and those procedures are now currently in the FAA's operational, environmental, and safety review phase. So the next step is to start the initial environmental review under NEPA for those proposed changes. For the LAX Community Noise Roundtable, they were created in September 2000 to provide an interactive forum to address aircraft noise issues associated with aircraft operations to and from LAX or Los Angeles International Airport. Also, much like the Northern California Metroplex, the Southern California Metroplex was implemented beginning in 2014 and through 2017. There was actually 3 phases of implementation since the beginning of that. The Roundtable has focused primarily on solving the noise concerns from the affected communities that have noticed changes due to the Metroplex. There are 3 primary issues that are being looked at currently: the concentration and load altitudes of flights on the north downwind arrival path, relocation of the Lady J flight path that turns north after departing over the ocean, and then relocation of a waypoint to move it further offshore. The FAA is proceeding with the relocation of the Lady J through their new flight procedure process, so that's in process now, being designed and reviewed. The FAA and Roundtable have set up a technical working group to focus on the other 2, which are the north downwind and the Juice waypoint, and they began meeting just last month. Next is the Oakland Airport Community Noise Management Forum, the one just across the bay from San Francisco. The FAA began its phased implementation, as you know, of the Metroplex procedures in 2014. The Oakland Noise Forum presented the FAA with a 73-page report containing 34 recommendations and 3 process questions in 2017. And the report specifically asked the FAA to identify and adjust 6 specific procedures and or relocate specific waypoints. The Noise Forum also formed a subcommittee to address next-gen related noise concerns and focus the requests made to the FAA. As a result of that, the Oakland 5 departure heading will change from 296 degrees to 290 to lessen the noise over Alameda, and that change is currently going through environmental review and scheduled for 2024 for implementation. The next gen subcommittee is still considering 2 of the original Noise Forum's recommendations, being the Hush and the Windsor. FAA has considered the recommendations not feasible and is prepared to work with the Noise Forum to try to continue working to solve the problem, which can't be done through the recommendations made by the Noise Forum. The FAA has communicated they're trying to reduce the number of charted visual approaches. Therefore, any new charted visual approach would require justification over the new technology, such as RNAV and required or RNPs. Oakland has hired a new airspace consultant, Lean Consulting, I believe they're called, to help propose alternatives to the FAA by working with the subcommittee and the airport staff. Now on to the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission, perhaps one of the oldest types of roundtables established at an airport, and it began in 1996 under an intergovernmental agreement, or IGA. And that IGA is renewed every 5 years by each member's governing body. And the ONCC actually oversees noise management efforts, participates in planning and noise mitigation projects, oversees an effective and impartial noise monitoring system, and advises the airport on related noise issues. And so it has a reach much further than the San Francisco Roundtable. And you know, they just have a hand in all those things. The airport recently completed a modernization program known as the OMP, or O'Hare Modernization Program, that realigned their runways, resulting in 6 parallel east-west runways and 2 crosswind runways. And as a result of that, the ONCC created a Fly Quiet Committee with the goal to come to a consensus on a new plan to minimize and equally distribute noise at night from those realigned runways. I'm not going to go into all the details here. You can see the new runways off to the right there, but the ONCC criteria are listed there for the Fly Quiet program. It was really looking at a way to rotate the use of the runways to provide relief at night to certain communities over a certain period of time and then rotate to the next runway and the next configuration, that sort of thing. So they did come up. The aviation department has requested the FAA review the proposed fly quiet program, and after FAA review, it will proceed to implementation. So they're not there yet. They have established their criteria. They have proposed what it is they want, and it's under FAA review at this time. The ONCC currently has 6 committees, and you see them listed there, one being the Fly Quiet program that we talked about, but they also oversee the sound insulation program, so they have a residential and a school subcommittee, as well as a technical committee and executive and ad hoc committees. Other updates include residential sound insulation continues, having treated over 11,500 homes to date, with over 350 in construction. And they're soon to add 3 fixed noise monitors to their monitoring system. Now moving on to San Diego International Airport Noise Advisory Committee, also established quite a while ago in 1981 to provide a forum for collaborative discussion of aircraft noise issues and other related matters. Again, it's related to Metroplex here, which began in 2014, as you may have known, with phase 3 implementation in April 2017 down in Southern California. So one of the things ANAC requested was a flight procedure change to take aircraft further offshore after departing before making their turns to the south and then east back over the peninsula there, so that when they do cross over, they'd be at a higher altitude. FAA actually implemented the new procedure in July 22, and the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority reported an average increase in altitude of 2,300 feet during the first 30 days of implementation. And I think that's all I have. And if there are any questions, I can take them. I may or may not know the answers, but I just, hopefully you found that of information of interest to you all. And as I said, this was really meant as more of an introduction than an update. But when there are updates in the future, I will plan to come back and provide them to this roundtable. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reindale. That definitely was a very comprehensive and, for me at least, useful introduction that's going to provide a good summary of what's going on with different roundtables and what have they been working with, and hopefully we learn the lessons from what they have been successful at. So thank you very much. Let me move on to members of the roundtable, see if they have any questions or comments for you. Excellent presentation. Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Rendell, I really enjoyed reading this. I have to admit, I am so impressed with O'Hare's roundtable and the way they've approached things. I think we've talked about it a little bit in the past. They have more runways, so they have some options. It seems like, and as you know, from ground-based noise, every time we think we might find a solution, for some reason, it never works here at SFO. But I really enjoyed reading that. And I hope when we do our next work plan, we go back and look at what San Diego and basically San Diego and O'Hare, you didn't put Logan in there. I think Logan has some similarities to us, if we could add Logan. And then these questions, because our roundtable, even though it's not, it is in our original charter, only looks at noise. Which roundtables also look at air emissions? And then I'm having a number, actually quite a large number of residents in multiple neighborhoods complaining of a very, what's the right word? Smell of jet fuel. Even as in our neighborhood called Meadows, which is up in the hill that SFO took down to create the runways. So do any of these roundtables also look at emissions and also look at fuel jumps, whether they're an emergency dump or some other kind of fuel dump or fuel leaks?
I can check into that. My understanding, I believe that they all are focused only on noise, but there are 1 or 2 that I have to verify that with. I know that the Oakland Noise Forum had considered including other items other than noise. They opted to not do that. That was a few years ago. I can't remember the exact date of that. But I believe that all of these are noise only at this point. But I will confirm that and get back to you.
At one of the last UC Davis symposiums pre-COVID, I know I met Roundtable public representatives, and they said that their roundtables, which I think is LAX's one, does include air emissions. But after the FAA came to us in 2019, October 2019, and said their new science shows that airplanes are actually giving off more PM 2.5 or less, on that, I think it gives us more tools in our tool chest to look at where all these airplanes are flying and how many are concentrated from whichever airports over the same cities over and over again. We can't keep thinking that our westerly winds blow everything to the East Bay or to San Joaquin Valley. We need to be knowing what's happening, especially with PM 2.5 and smaller. Thank you.
Yeah, and I am involved with the LAX Roundtable as well, and they do not handle anything other than noise at this time. They have also talked about
maybe it was
but
an old
it's
timer.
primarily
I'm confusing which airport, because UC Davis, there's people from all over the world.
right.
But I know other ones do look at emissions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? I don't see any. Again, Mr. Randall, thank you so much. Looking forward for your future presentation on this item.
Yeah, Chair
Yes.
Hindi, I see Carol Ford is raising her hand literally rather than using the raised hand. feature.
Okay, I apologize. I can't see everybody on the screen. Member Ford, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jean. My question is, and this is my cat Whimsy, who really is interested in this. I wanted to know why, if you knew in Maryland at the Marshall Airport, why they had lawsuits. Wouldn't people be happy about this? Why did the state sue them?
It was prior to the changes. So they sued them over the implementation of the Metroplex, which is why then they had that like 2-year hiatus where they really didn't engage with the FAA at that point, because the FAA just refused to engage at that point. But after the lawsuits were completed, then they re-engaged and started the process to try to then implement those recommended measures.
Okay, thank you.
So the lawsuits were not over, the lawsuits were not over those measures being recommended by the Roundtable, but the previous measures.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Member Ford. Anyone else? I don't see any virtual hands. If anyone is on the screen, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Rindell. And let me check with Kathleen if she is all set.
I'm all set.
Thank you. So let me apologize for all of you that we're going to have to jump back a little bit before going to item number 8. We're going to move on back to item number 4. Kathleen, while you were gone, I kind of did my introduction to the item and gave basically the background and what has transpired on the technical working group and why this is being presented. So we're just all waiting for your presentation. If you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And my apologies to everyone. My computer absolutely crashed, and so I had to reset up on my home computer. And I apologize because the resolution of these slides will not be as good as I had hoped, but I think I think it'll work.
No worries.
Thank you. Let me start out by sharing my screen with everyone. And you should be seeing a picture of the Bay Area. Yes, Sam?
Yes, but could that be a little bit larger?
I
Like
can
full
make it a
screen?
little bit larger, but I'm gonna, yes, you bet.
Okay.
All right, there we go. And we're gonna go between a couple of different places now. So I wanted to start out, as no doubt Mr. Hindi said, he explained the concept of what we're doing, which is simply to make suggestions to the GBAS committee about areas that they could be investigating to possibly create new flight procedures for us down the road. I wanted us first to briefly review what it is that we're going to be talking about over the next few slides. That we have a total of 10 suggestions, but don't get too nervous. There's really only 6 suggestions because several of them are grouped together. So I want to review for you, and I'll try to keep this screen up on the side smaller. The major arrivals in the west flow of San Francisco. As we know, the majority of the time, the airplanes are taking off to the north and always landing on the westerly direction, except for that's about 85% of the time. So that's what this represents, an 85%. So we have major arrivals down here on the Bodega, comes down this way, circles around and comes into land to San Francisco. There's another branch off of the Bodega that comes down the bay and around this way. Let me see if I can. Oh, yes, I have. Okay. Let me see. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was not totally set up on this computer, so I may not be able to do what I want to do. Oh, I can. Okay. So those come down from the north, swoop around left and right, and come into to land in San Francisco. Airplanes from the east, Chicago, New York, will come in this way, landing this way to the runways. From the south, they come up this way and join to the runway. And the final one is slightly lesser used, and that's the Pirate, and those come from, excuse me, it was a horrible. Those come from the oceanic area, predominantly Hawaiian Islands, and they sort of are fitted in or merged in with the other ones. It's quite a chore for our controllers. I happen to think these controllers we have in the Bay Area are some of the best trained and talented ones we have. They have a lot of challenges for their job performance, and it's a tough job. Okay, having said that, I'm going to leave this up to some extent so you can see it as we go along. The first of the 10 suggestions is in your packet, and starting at page 34, I believe it is. And try to make this as big as I can. To orient you, San Francisco's up here. San Francisco Airport is here. And currently, the GBAS folks have decided that they will be presenting, and they have presented to us, a bodega down the bay. Oops, excuse me, sorry. Down the bay that comes around and follow the red line. The red line is basically what they are suggesting for the bodega down the bay. What this suggestion does is modify that somewhat and suggest that while the start of the red line looks really good, at some point, somewhere along the way, perhaps if the airplanes start making their right turns, if they could make that turn a little bit tighter and sort of head closer to the midspan of the San Mateo Bridge, and then jog back over to the airport and the runways. That would keep the our airplanes much farther away from East San Mateo, Foster City, and Redwood Shores. So it would give us quite a bit more distance away from those. And that's the sum total of this number one suggestion. It's pretty simple, and it doesn't change the path very much at all. And the path changes that take place are taking place over the water and not affecting anyone. That's all I need to say about this one. And Mr. Chair, did you want to take member questions at the end of as appropriate?
Yes, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and pause after each suggestion and try to get input and questions. Okay. At this point. It'll be easier than going back and forth.
Okay, so questions are appropriate.
Members, thank you. Thank you so much, Kathleen, and I appreciate the technical difficulties that you had and your ability to recover. No, seriously, because I know your computer crashed, so here you are on a different one. But thank you. Okay, members, anybody has any questions on what Kathleen just presented in this suggestion, the first suggestion? I don't see any hands up.
Okay, then we'll go briskly along to the next one. Now, I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until we take 2A, 2B, and 2C, because they are all basically the same suggestion, but just applied to 3 different arrivals. So if I can just explain the first one, and then we'll briefly go over 2B and 2C, and then take questions, that would probably help. Now, Bodega, as the one we saw earlier down here, is the one that comes down down across San Francisco, then down the peninsula, swoops around and comes in that way to land. I know that's small, but I just wanted to show you how that worked with it. So that's this red line. This is the existing Bodega arrival, comes down the peninsula, more or less like this, and the red follows the red line to the airport. Again, that causes us some problems because those airplanes are going very close to East San Mateo, Foster City, Redwood Shores, and it's noisy. They actually go over Foster City, over the edge of Foster City. So instead of doing that, we're suggesting that when it's feasible. Now, sometimes we've got Oakland traffic coming into here. Sometimes we've got airplanes from the east coming in this way. That we're going to make this difficult. But when the controllers can do it, and when the procedure could be designed to be used, we would like to suggest that instead of making the turn here tight with the red line, that they just widen it out a little bit and just keep it that way all the way to the bridge, and then pick up from the bridge, pick up and come into the airport. So that's simply to just widen up that turn and bring it up to the bridge before coming over. Many other approaches to the runway do have approaches that use these very waypoints that are indicated here, and the GBAS people will do whatever they seem to see as appropriate to do that. And then if we can just scroll down to 2B, you'll see this looks kind of the same. This is just applying the same concept to the surfer arrival, the one that comes up from the Los Angeles area. And instead of turning this right here to just once they're clear of all the residences and they're over land that's not over residences, they swing out over here and follow it to the airport. Just giving a little bit of space for these, mostly for these cities right here. And the third one, 2C, is similar, but a little tiny bit different in that this one would be applied to the pirate arrival, the one that comes from the ocean. Okay. Oops, sorry. This is the arrival that comes from the ocean. And this procedure crosses over about the area of Woodside, the old Woodside VOR, and then picks up a heading instead of a delineated path, a 060 heading. So we're not entirely sure where airplanes will be going from this point. Sometimes they're given a vector over this way, or sometimes this way, sometimes this way. It's hard to know exactly where the controllers will take them because this is the one they're trying to fit in with other arrivals.
Kathleen, my apologies for interrupting you. Just so you know, there's a little bit of lag from the time that you scroll and the time you kind of put your marker. So just know that about maybe 10 seconds or so like.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. I'm not sure how to do it. At any rate, so what this suggestion is that at whatever time the controllers are going to try to fit these folks in, whenever they're clear of the residences, that they would try to take them on a path just like the last two along that way, just a wider path. And this would give, again, respite to the same areas that we just talked about in the previous two. So basically, this is a a widening, a small widening of the path to keep the airplanes from getting too close to the shoreline. So that's 2A, 2B, and 2C. And I'm going through this fast because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I hope we have some questions.
Okay.
Mr. Hindi, would be a good time for take questions on 2A, 2B, 2C.
Okay, thank you. I do not see any hands up. If anyone again has any questions or comments on 2A, B, and C, now would be the time, or we could come back. I see Vice Chair Royce has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is more a procedural question, Kathleen. These suggestions, excuse me, are going to go to the FAA, and what's the process after that? Because when I look at it and they sound logical to me, I'm not really sure I know the pros and cons per se, other than probably logistics that would cause me not to make the suggestion so they can explore it more.
Well, you bring up a good point, Mr. Royce, and that is that our role tonight is just to say, hey, this is an idea, a suggestion, a concept. Give it to the GBAS team, and they're going to be responsible to say, are you kidding? We're not even going to look at that. Or, maybe, let's look at this and see what we can do. Following that, they're going to have some deep conversations with the FAA. And following that, at some point, the FAA is going to consider this like a regular procedure, and that is going through the regular process. And part of that process down the road, far down the road, if the GBAS team makes something of one of these, will be to come back to the roundtable and say, okay, this is what we came up with, and this is what the FAA is going to buy into. And at that point, then we're faced with the same kind of procedural issues that we always have with the FAA, and that's the stated FAA regulations and procedures. Does that answer it?
Yeah, Kathleen, it does. I mean, it's hard not to want to support this to further it along and see what the pros and cons might be from the FAA, and also what the impact might be, because I think that's important too. My second question, if I might, is a little unrelated, but these suggestions, I presume they involve public input? Were some of these from the public as well as from the committee itself?
Well, part of these recommendations, some of these recommendations came from the Roundtable's recommendations to the FAA as part of the select committee process back in 2016. And you'll actually see the last couple slides, I used the pictures from that recommendation. And so that they were actually put in as one of the many recommendations the Roundtable made in 2016 that went to the administrator through the congressional offices. So I resurrected those. Other of them had just come from various suggestions, and honestly, some of them came from me looking at traffic and saying, wow, why are they doing that? Why can't we do this? Yeah. So they came from different sources.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate wherever they come from. I just want to make sure the public, because we have a lot of people very informed on this, have had a chance to weigh in, and I'm sure they had. And that's what I think you told me. And it sounds like a couple of these have been vetted already too. So
well, I don't, yes, I mean, vetted insofar as they were part of the Roundtable recommendations in their 2016 report. But of course, the process has been and remains, as far as I know, still open to the public. Anyone from the public can put in their own recommendations, their own suggestions. And we've been encouraging that for the last couple of meetings. And I don't know, hopefully maybe people have been privately emailing the GBAS people, which would be great. But we have been encouraging public input all throughout the time.
That sounds great. I would support that thoroughly. It'd be nice if they did submit direct letters, if we were copied on us, we could keep a consortium of the ideas or suggestions. But the fact they're being submitted for review, I think is good. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, I don't know. The GBAS team, I think, doesn't have any process for sharing that information at the moment. So I don't have any direct knowledge. I'm just hoping that people have been sending them in. Because it's a great opportunity for people to, make some recommendations regarding their communities.
Nope, I hope everybody avails themselves of it. So thank you.
Yeah, and the chairman will be giving out the email address for GBAS at following this presentation. So we have it available, and it will also be on the Roundtable website along with our meeting notice in place where we have, you know, printable agenda and such. There'll also be the GBAS website email address. So they did say they wanted to kind of wrap up by the end of the year with this grouping of suggestions and recommendations. So I would urge people to contact them sooner rather than later.
If I may jump in through the chair.
Sure.
We have had no formal feedback through the sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. Looking for comments. The ones we received through the technical working group were the only ones at this point. And we're very encouraged to see them. But again, our window is getting short. So if anybody does have one they're sitting on, please shoot it in now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair, for your questions. And just again, I will give this again, but if anyone is interested, the mail to sfo.gbas@flysfo.com. This is where you send your suggestions. And just want to emphasize what Kathleen just mentioned. These are suggestions that at this point are going only to SFO GBAS team. They're not going to the FAA. The SFO GBAS team will determine if these are things that worthy of exploration, if these are feasible, and they could decide what they want to do, what level they take them next. Just so we set the expectation properly. Thank you. Member Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask a question for Ms. Wentworth. For some reason, I have it in my mind that straight line at approach was the safety issue, and that's kind of why we had never questioned it and kind of left it alone. So is this something that GBAS gives us new capabilities that allows them to make that late turn, or is just something that's just been the way it is?
Mr. Ortiz, I'm not exactly sure which picture you're referring to. Is it the first one?
Well, I'm just saying, and all of these approaches, which they all make perfect sense that you should fly over the bay as much as you can versus being close to land. But I somehow have the idea that approach where it flies just almost directly over Foster City was a straight line to the runway, and that was set up because of safety issues. And so the question I have for you is this something that GBAS allows us to do that we didn't have the capability before GBAS?
Mr. Ortiz, you bring up a great question and highlight something I really should have said at the outset. Almost all of these suggestions are probably suggestions that cannot be used 24/7, 365. So by that, I mean, some of these suggestions might only be usable when the traffic is low. Some of these more ambitious suggestions can only be used maybe in the dark of the night when the traffic is extremely low. So it's not so much that they needed a straight line, but which, well, you do for the ILS, but not for other procedures that go here. But that you've got two runways and they always, you want to use both runways as best you can. And it's not necessarily a straight line requirement. Let me just quickly go out of turn here and just show you something in the last slide, just because I think this is a great image. This is the only thing I have is a pilot's view of a departure. Here's from Orange County Airport, and here's the airport up here. And this, I'm looking at the lower right-hand corner of the slide to orient you, a black and white image. And as you can see, this is depicting the path of takeoff. It doesn't apply to us because we're talking GBAS, which are arrivals, but I just to your point on the straight line. And this is a departure that they negotiated and got approved by the FAA. And this is a departure using RNAV, satellite-based technology, which goes out and then makes a little turn for a mile, then makes another turn, goes out for a mile, makes 2 miles, goes for a turn, 2 miles, makes, as you can see, there's nothing straight line about that. And that's the kind of technology that the satellite-based technology can provide. And whether or not GBAS can provide that, I would have to leave to Mr. Hanna, who happens to be here and maybe would like to weigh in. I'm like putting him on the spot. He's still here.
Hi, Kathleen. I am here. Sorry, I just to jump in. So I think first of all, I just want to echo something that Bert mentioned. As a project team, we are so excited to get these recommendations from you and potentially from the roundtable as you guys vote to decide which of these you'd like us to take a look at, in particular with our subcommittee. And just to remind everybody, the subcommittee that's supporting the SFO GBAS project team is really very focused on technical feasibility and usability of the procedures first and foremost over any possible noise benefits. That's something that comes a bit later in our subcommittee process. So that's what we're going to be doing with any of the proposed procedures that you're reviewing here tonight, that you'd like us to take a look at. So just to quickly answer your question about some of the curved paths or the late curved paths, I think my first glance through just Paul Hanna, one very small participant in a large subcommittee of very seasoned and skilled people. I think many of the things that you're showing so far tonight are really capabilities of just any RNAV or RNP capable aircraft or navigation setup. So not necessarily enabled explicitly by the GBAS, but certainly the last mile, some pun intended, to get to the runway. All of the concepts that you're proposing would easily link up to the GBAS. And that's a key component of why so many of these concepts that we like to explore are being done through the GBAS project, because it gives us and to some extent the pilots and the air traffic controllers that confidence of knowing that even after perhaps a late maneuver, like some of the ones that are being shown here, that aircraft is going to safely connect onto a precision path that brings it right to the runway every time. So it's a very good springboard platform for us to evaluate some of these more advanced concepts. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know that the GBAS is required to do some of the maneuvers that are being shown here, but certainly to get the aircraft safely to touchdown after doing some of these maneuvers using RNAV or RNP, I think is a really strong starting point. So again, thank you so much for the suggestions. Looking forward to the roundtables preferred solutions to take forward with our subcommittee. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth, and thank you, Mr. Hanna. Appreciate the response.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Hanna. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it was much appreciated.
I do have more. Kathleen, let me move on to Goodwin.
Thank you, Chair. Kathleen, this question would be for you. This is in regard to 2A, suggestion 2A. If you can scroll to that, I'm just concerned about the suggested path. Does that bring these flights? I know it's in the area of the Dumbarton Bridge on the kind of the East Bay there. Does that bring that over any housing on that side? I don't want to dump any noise on the East Bay to save residents on the west side here. So I'm just concerned. I do believe that's wetlands over there, but just to make sure.
I believe you are right. But I have to say that our job tonight and me in presenting this to you is to just, get your concerns and pass the whole thing as appropriate to the GBAS people. We definitely do not intend any of this to affect negatively other people. And that's why most all of this is designed to be over water. And I agree with you. I believe that's all wetlands over there. I can make this probably bigger and you can probably see it a little bit better if I can.
Yeah, it's hard to tell on this particular aerial map.
I apologize. I have not as much control over this as the other computer I was using. Well, I can take it anyway. Okay, so if you could, is that any better? I hope a little bit. Afraid to move it too much more. And so the one we were looking at, there's quite a bit of wet bay or undeveloped, non-residential area along this area.
Okay, all right.
But once again, the suggested, in this case, the suggested green line is not even a suggested green line. It's a concept saying, can you just go wider than they're going normally? How much wider? I don't know. I don't know what's I don't know what's feasible. We don't know what's feasible. We don't have a clue. So it's just consider that almost all of these green lines, if you will, or suggested new procedures are written in clouds or written in cotton candy or something. It's just like it's amorphous because we don't know enough to know. All we know is we'd like it to go a little further away from our cities. That's all we're saying. And where that takes us, that's more than you and I can figure out tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. Member Lopez, welcome. This is your first meeting for the Roundtable. Great to have you here with us from representing East Palo Alto.
Thank you, Chair Indy, and I want to just echo my my excitement that East Palo Alto has come to the table in the SFO discussions. I'm really thrilled, and certainly we have our fair share of noise, but that's more of our Palo Alto side, and we definitely can have a conversation about that. But I want to first echo my appreciation for being part of this dialogue, and just going to dive right in. So apologies if this has been addressed, and also apologies for coming in a bit tardy, finishing a previous meeting. With this proposed green line that I understand has kind of been algorithmically or put in a cloud, as you said, has it been computed like the delta in terms of the carbon emissions that the planes would, in other words, have we done an analysis of how much more miles that would add to the overall trip and how much more emissions it would, over time that would do, in other words, doing a cost-effective analysis between the emissions versus the noise reduction for our cities?
No, Mr. Lopez, we have not. We have not done any analytics on these at all. These are all simple suggestions and concepts that need to be pursued. At such point as these are passed along to the GBAS committee, however many or any, it will be up to them to decide, as Mr. Hannah Reese said, basically, whether or not they're going to be feasible and usable, and whatever other criteria they put to it. But that all of the other issues of safety, of feasibility, impact to others, all that kind of stuff would come way down the line for analysis. And the GBAS team has been very good about coming back to the roundtable and letting us take a look at some of their proposals, and they've given us a lot of data on it. I don't know if they've given us particular matter on what you've talked about, but if not, we'll get that from them when they come again to talk about procedures. But it's just too premature. To answer your question, no, we don't have any of that data at this time, but it will be part of the process. It's just early in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Member Lopez. Appreciate your engagement. Thank you. Okay, Kathleen, I see Member Taylor has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Kathleen, I haven't had the opportunity to reach out to you just because of time constraints to try to come up with some proposals that would help a little bit more for cities like Menlo Park and East Palo Alto. So I would need to submit that to the GBAS committee, or I would need to submit it to you if I came up with something or if a community member did.
Mr. Hannah, I think you guys are kind of wanting to wrap things up. Member Taylor, I think maybe it would be expeditious to submit it directly to the GBAS team so that they
yes, please. Send it to sfo.gbas@flysfo.com.
Okay, and do we know when the next meeting is?
Next technical working group?
Yes.
Or the next GBAS meeting?
The next GBAS meeting, when they would be looking at these proposals.
That would be next week.
Next week. Okay. And then my last question is, will the proposals include anything around time, since there's a restriction on how long these flight paths can be used?
Not quite following that question.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
So
I mean, for how many years they could be used, or months?
No, just the time of day, because it's
yes.
an a restriction on the number of hours. So some would be referred to at night. Would that be from midnight to 2 a.m. or would that be from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m.? So I'm wondering if the GBAS committee would be making recommendations on hours of day.
We kind of have to wait to see what the FAA says they can do. For example, the one on the screen right now, if they were able to say, yeah, we can't do that except for the hours of, I'm just throwing something out here, 1 and 5 a.m. And other than that, we can't do it. And I'm not condemning this one at all. I'm just giving this as an example. But that would be kind of the feedback we would get. Come back to the technical working group with the questions and say, okay, if they could only do it between 1 and 5, should we go forward with it?
Okay, thank you.
Member Taylor, I would say that most of these suggestions that we're going over tonight, most of them would probably be effective or could be useful during the nighttime hours, or during low volume traffic hours in the daytime. So yeah, so that's a very big consideration. But it's a matter of, some incremental improvement is better than nothing.
I definitely agree, especially that we're coming near the holidays, and that's when we get increased flights up to, at least for our area of the county, up to about 20 hours because of the small airports too. So 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. Yeah. So at any rate, so I do appreciate this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Member Taylor. Kathleen, I don't see anyone else. Why don't you go ahead and proceed with the suggestion?
So I think we went through 2 ABC. So now we're going to do 3 ABC, which is going to be very much like you saw before. So this is 3A, which you saw before was maybe something that would be, we said, well, let's see if we could do like this. So now we're saying, well, if it's the middle of the night and there's nobody else around, can we just really take this out over the wetlands here and make it a wide path? And you're probably saying to yourself, well, my goodness, what difference does it make if we make a wider path? We've already got them far away from the communities that we were concerned about. What's the big deal? What's the benefit of taking a wider path? And the benefit is a little bit technical, but understandable. Airplanes, the altitudes for airplanes are determined by a number of different things. Terrain, obstacles are important to stay above those. Landing altitude at the airport, let's just call this 0 for now. It's almost 0. And when the airplane has to lose altitude from, let's say, 4,000 feet to 0, it needs a certain distance over which it can gradually lose that altitude to be an effective use of the time and of the altitude loss. So that if we were to have the ability to have a much bigger, I'm making this up, of course, but bigger pathway for it, that would be a longer pathway. Now, Mr. Lopez brings up the emissions, and that's a trade-off. So that would be a longer pathway. But during that pathway, the airplane has time to lose more altitude than if she just flew starting over here. So the longer pathway allows the aircraft to lose more altitude, which means that the airplane can be up higher, maybe not a lot higher, maybe 100 feet, maybe 200 feet. I don't know what it translates into, but it can be higher throughout this whole descent pattern here, because it will have time to lose that extra altitude if you give it a path, a wide path. I know that's not a very good explanation. I'd do better if I had a graph I could show you on a chart, but I just have to have you take me at my word that the longer the path for the airplane, the more time it has, the more distance and time it has to lose altitude, And at the higher in altitude, it can start at. So that would be an opportunity, perhaps when it leaves here, instead of being at 4,500 feet, maybe it could be at 4,800 feet. I have no idea. I'm just making this up because it all depends on how wide a swath you can make. So this is something that would probably be able to be used only at the night, in the middle of the nighttime, maybe like Mr. Ganong's mention of 1 to 5 a.m. when there's really nobody else around, and it doesn't matter. Although we would prefer that they would just do it down the bay, given a choice. But at any rate, that's what this is about. This is about being an extra wide pattern to allow time to lose altitude. And I'll just run through the next couple, which are going to look just the same, look similar. Get rid of these notes for the other two arrivals. So this one is the extra long pathway, giving extra time to lose that extra, what we hope would be an extra altitude given to the airplane further back. So in this case, perhaps, at this point, maybe you'd be 200 feet higher, knowing that you'd have this extra distance to be able to lose that. I'm just saying 200 is a number. I have no idea what the real number would be. Might be more, might be less. Depends how wide a swath you can make. And the same thing would be here for the pirate arrival as well. Again, we don't know. I mean, we also have the problem, of course, of I'm trying to look for San Jose down here. But during the nighttime, San Jose has very, very, very limited traffic. So who knows, you might be able to take this and go like this and cause a very wide pattern. Who knows? GBAS people can look at it and see what they can come up with. But this would be something that you would probably use in a very limited set of hours, very limited at night. Again, this is an extra wide that has the potential for allowing higher altitude earlier in the procedure. And that's A, B, and C for number 3.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. On 3A, that's theoretically kind of benefits Palo Alto, Menlo Park.
3, I think it's 3B, isn't it? Let me get it. Yeah, 3B. Yes, exactly. I mean, it could benefit. I don't know what the GBAS people could do, but assuming that this extra space, extra distance equaled 200 feet, then you could be 200 feet higher here, probably 200 feet higher here, 200 feet, it would go back all the way. So it has the potential. The concept has potential.
How about 3A?
Yes.
Can you scroll up to 3A? Because I was thinking that is kind of when you get the wider,
well,
you have a higher altitude, you're coming in over Menlo and
yes, same idea. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely same idea. Wherever along the way, whichever path it is, the concept is comparable. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone has any questions or comments on the suggestion 3A, B, and C? Member Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. Kathleen, I think we've talked about this, the fact that all the Oakland flights fly over Millbrae, Burlingame, San Bruno. If you look at 3A as well as 2A, and it's Bodega, it looks like on 3A, they're trying to keep a good part of that over the water and not over that one. I think that one right there.
Okay.
Just after a while, since my city can never seem to we can't get insulation, we can't get any reduction in the noise that we're hit in. The FAA doesn't include the noise behind airplanes on that. And now we've got flights flying on top of us, which is just one more noise input. And then I forwarded to you that the FAA is currently working on the air taxis, which are going to fly right over me. The helicopters already fly right over my house. At one point, are there certain airspaces that have just had enough? I understand that this is more about entering into that, and I don't know what elevation they're at right there, but I'm tired of my city having to take everything. It's well past the time that it has to stop.
Okay, Ms. Schneider, I'm not sure I get the question. Just for clarification, if I may,
It's my general opinion when I looked at all 10 of these, that most of them, you know, carry a burden on San Mateo County. They're higher over San Francisco. San Francisco County of profits, we pay the price. There has to be a balancing in that.
I respect that. I just wanted to be clear so that that it's not a question. These red lines currently exist. That's what's currently happening. So it's making no change to what's currently happening. Should there be improvements made in other areas? Absolutely. But this procedure that's been in place here for decades, this red line, well, it has been in previous iterations before next gen, been similar, not exact, but similar. So that I would not anticipate that this would change anything that would be of import, that would be impactful. But I maybe I'm missing the point.
No, I mean, I understand it's like, okay, Millbury, you've always been noisy, so you're just going to stay noisy. We will never see a reduction in noise because we've always been noisy, even though we predate the airport. And
Okay.
it doesn't matter how big the planes are or how many passengers or how many flights, we will always get more and more noisy, regardless of any technology or any system, because we look at each action independently. And we don't look at all the Oakland flights on top of us or Bodega. I looked at Bodega here saying, golly gosh, why are we even allowing Bodega? I hear the councilman from East Palo Alto saying, yeah, well, it reduces their consumption of fuel, so that's a VHG thing. But noise keeps me awake at night, which reduces my ability to fight off disease. And at some point, we've got to talk about that.
Okay, thank you, Member Schneider. Let me just remind all of us that we are dealing here with arrival at this point, just because GBAS is only addressing arrival and it's not really addressing departure. I wish it is, but the reality is it is not. But thank you for your comment.
Yeah, GBAS is the technology is for arrivals. So yes,
but
absolutely.
will allow more flights to land and therefore more flights to process through SFO on any given day.
I don't see how that would.
They're building more gates, more flights.
Thank you, Member Schneider, for your comments. Kathleen, I don't see any more hands on this.
Okay, going on to
number 3. Let's go ahead and
number 4. Okay, this is going to be a little bit change of pace here, so stay with me. We've talked about the west flow, which is where we're landing on runways 28. That's 85% of the time. As we all know, when we have rainy weather around here, most people just go, oh, the airplanes are doing something different. We're not quite sure what they're doing, but they're doing something different and they're going somewhere else. And that raises a whole lot of complaints from people that are new to a lot of the noise because it is quite different in location. So this is a concept that is for those rainy day patterns. Now, granted, they're only maybe 10 or 12% of the time, whatever it is, but when they're here, they affect people. So why not take a look at them? So this is a picture here. We have San Francisco, city of San Francisco up here in the top, and San Francisco Airport is right here, and you can see it's hard. I apologize. A little red airplane on the runway here. So what this is showing is all of these red lines on this chart are actual flight tracks that took place on a rainy day this past September. And that is showing the actual paths of what airplanes do when it's raining. So some are coming up from the south down here, coming up this way. Some are coming down from the north up here, coming down this way. And eventually they all sort of wind up doing something like this and coming in and landing that way. So that's their purpose, is to come around and land this way on the runway. Now, what this suggests is that instead of having all of these red lines come over North County, the coast, a lot of people complain from the coast when it rains, or over San Francisco. Instead of doing that, why not take these airplanes and bring them, in this case, up the coast, up the water, and bring these guys to stay as well off the water. And at such point as they reach right about here or so, they can take a turn and go through the Golden Gate and then join up with their path that they need to do to get to the airport. And if they need a little addition, if it gets too crowded up there, they could even have a nice little holding pattern here to just make circles there until it's their turn. All of it done over the ocean, not affecting anybody. No lines over here, just lines over the ocean and through the Golden Gate. That's it in a nutshell. And this would probably be not restricted to nighttime. I would think this would be done 24/7 during those periods of time when we have the rain and that's the runway in use. Questions, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Member Schneider.
Thank you. I like the procedure, although it does mean that there are more runway 19 departures 100 feet over Millbrae, but it's not 13 or 14%. During the fires that we've had the last 5 or 6 years, they use reverse flow so that air flights are not taking off up towards Napa, Sonoma. So during those really bad fires, we had planes taking off over us constantly. So it's more closer to 17 or 19%, although it never shows in the director's report that way. And it is not acknowledged by the FAA. Just a correction there.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else has any questions or comments on number 4? Okay, I don't see any. Kathleen, you could go ahead, proceed.
Okay, number 5, it's a little tricky. I know it's late, so just hang in there with me and I'll try to do this expeditiously. At nighttime, going back when the chairman asked about East Palo Alto and Menlo Park, and we talked about the airplanes coming up from the south that would connect with them. This would be a design that would keep that from happening, that we would totally eliminate at night, maybe the dead of the night, maybe only for a few hours, but at night, we would try to get rid of those airplanes coming up from the south. The way we would do this is, and this is a concept, just a concept, is to use a flight path that mostly exists that is being used by Oakland. And that is the use of a procedure that leaves Los Angeles, goes up this purple magenta path all the way to the Bay Area. Then, and I'm going to look at the other chart now. If we pick up that purple path over here and a closer look, it could take you up to about here. All of that purple path already exists. Okay, exists for Oakland, but it exists in anybody. Oh, I don't know who can use it, but it exists. I want you to skip over a bit and look at this blue pattern. And this blue pattern already exists as a procedure into San Francisco. So you've got blue lines exist, purple lines exist. The only thing that doesn't exist is this red line. Whoops, that's not good. So the concept is have airplanes file to fly Los Angeles to San Francisco using this particular purple line, create a new black line, and then use this existing blue line, which would probably be at this point a GBAS blue line, only probably it can do a better job than the blue one that's there, and have it all connect to San Francisco. And that means that airplanes that typically are coming from, let's see, I don't know exactly where it is, from somewhere around there, that are coming up on the surfer arrival to East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, that whole area would not be there. They would not be operating. They would be coming around the east, up the freeway, up the coast, up the inland, and use two established kind of areas that exist. Can you add a new black line? And at nighttime, some portion of the nighttime, whatever is conceivable, whatever can be worked out, airplanes would not be flying the surfer. that's the quick and dirty on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any question on this suggestion? Comments? Seeing none, Kathleen, go ahead, proceed, please. Oh, hold on 1 second. I see a hand coming up. Let me see if I could identify who that is. Oh, that's from the attendees. Never mind, keep going. We'll go back to the public after we're done.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The last one is what, so the one we just talked about with those two connecting purple and blue lines, that was submitted by the Roundtable to the select committees, to the members of Congress back in 2016, as this one was as well. And this is one that is challenging, very challenging for the GBAS group, but it would be, and this is the actual excerpt from the Roundtable's recommendation report to the congressional members and the administrator. The concept of this is simple. The concept is that instead of having, as Mr. Ortiz mentioned, the straight line going straight to 2-8 left and another line to 2-8 right, we take that straight line from that goes to 2-8 left. Oops, that's not going to work. And we can make it sort of a straight line for a little while. And then we'd want to kind of bump it out a little bit. And then you could continue to the runway. And then you would do the same thing on this side and have there be have the ability to have two parallel, almost simultaneous approaches to 2-8 left and right, and they would keep both approaches off of the communities that we've talked about earlier, the East San Mateo down to Redwood Shores, and keep them off of those communities. This has got a lot of challenges with it because there has to be spacing between the two, safety spacing between the two pathways. This might be something that could only be done perhaps in good weather. It's hard to say exactly what kinds of restrictions would be placed on it. And it's all a matter of separation that's required by the FAA. And we've also got inbound traffic into Oakland over in this area coming up that way. So it's filled with challenges, without a doubt. But I think that there's probably some thought to some potential for making this happen. And it would be simply, geez. All right, sorry. All right, I was going to draw the other half, but time is of the essence, and I think you get the concept. So I'll leave it there. And we already talked about what cool things you can do with satellites. So questions?
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. While members kind of raise their hands, let me kind of take a stab at this. I remember this as a recommendation from the select committee to the FAA. And I believe at the time the FAA mentioned that that's unfeasible, and simply because the technology to perform this dual offset, if you like, if you would, not existing. And the hope here is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, that GBAS will provide that technology at least to consider it, take another look at it.
And I think by seeing this other kind of illustration on the right, we can see that, there's been RNAV or GBAS, I don't know who can do it. It can do these incremental kinds of turns and do it in a way that can work with how two simultaneous. So as I say, it's a challenge, but I think it's worth giving it a try.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments on number 6? I see none from members of the roundtable. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comments. For that, I would go to Ms. Montez.
Thank you, Chairman. And as a reminder, you may use the raise hand feature or *9 if you are calling by phone. And I do see 2 hands raised, so I will first call on Jennifer Landisman, followed by Darlene Yapley. Ms. Landisman?
Thank you. So I think it's important to make a distinction between anything that was recommended by the select committee which had unanimous approval from 3 counties and all arrival communities. And it's different if the some of the resuscitated recommendations are from the SFO roundtable request to the FAA, because those did not have regional vetting. So I'm just going to assume that in addition to these procedures, that airlines and other operators have their own innovative ideas. So to me, the logic is to understand what's really changing with this new navigational aid, because as we know, with NextGen, a whole lot of things happened with air traffic control had a lot of options. So I would just take one step back, and I'd like to understand what all is happening first in terms of the industry needs. Now, in terms of community recommendations, they are about noise. So the most important thing should be to understand the noise impact of these recommendations. So that shouldn't be the last step. It should be the first step. In terms of data that SFO is providing on GBAS, it's single event. It's not the type of noise that we experience. And so I understand what Ms. Schneider is saying about, this piecemeal approach. And the only solution I see to that is to have a real comprehensive environmental analysis, not a CADEX, so that at least there's more investment on the part of the FAA in terms of doing noise assessments and community outreach, because we should have pre and post implementation done by the FAA, not just SFO, which in a sense is a private operator offering these, opportunities to the public to chime in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landesman. I will now call on Ms. Darlene Yapley.
For cities not on the roundtable, sending an email with GBAS suggestions is inadequate. There's no context setting, there's no dialogue, there's no clarification. I'm extremely disappointed. For the benefit of everyone, can SFO share the basics of their GBAS Group 2 and 3 review process? What criteria will SFO use to evaluate suggestions beyond technical feasibility? Will SFO evaluate every suggestion? Will SFO share the evaluations to the requester in public? Tonight, the roundtable will approve recommendations to be evaluated by SFO, but will there be another roundtable approval process after the data is gleaned from this evaluation, which is a comment member Royce made earlier, which I don't think was answered, that there is going to be a new discussion, a new decision based on data that gets generated from these ideas? And how will impacted cities who are not on the roundtable be included? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. And with that, Chairman, we do not have any more hands raised for item number 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montes. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the membership of the roundtable. If anyone has any comments, any questions before we entertain a motion. I don't see any hands up. I don't see anyone wants to have any questions, or no one has any questions. With that, I'm looking for a motion from the roundtable to submit all 10 GBAS 2A innovative procedure suggestions to the SFO GBAS team for their consideration.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you. This is Member Ortiz making the motion and seconded by Member O'Neill. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I remember.
Thank you both. Ms. Wentworth, would you please proceed with the roll call?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors, City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office, City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Yes.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
CCAC Airport Land Use Commission. Ms. Ford.
Unmuting, sorry. Yes.
Town of Atherton, City of Belmont, City of Brisbane. No response. City of Burlingame.
Yes.
Town of Colma.
Yes.
City of Daly City.
Yes.
City of East Palo Alto.
Yes.
City of Foster City.
Yes.
City of Half Moon Bay,
Yes.
Town of Hillsborough,
Yes.
City of Menlo Park,
Yes.
City of Millbrae,
Yes.
City of Pacifica,
Yes.
Town of Portola Valley. No response. City of Redwood City,
Yes.
City of San Bruno,
Yes.
City of San Carlos, no response. City of San Mateo, no response. City of South San Francisco
Yes.
and Town of Woodside, no response. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Kathleen, again, for working on this and again, facing the technical challenges, but we appreciate
Sorry.
everything that you have done on this. No need to be sorry. It happens. Thank you so much. Okay, going back to where we left off, next would be item number 8, the subcommittee updates. And I will start with the technical working group meeting, which happened on November 14th. I will provide that report for you. In addition to what we have heard, big portion of the meeting really was dealing with those suggestions that we just talked about and you just voted on, but also we did address the flight quiet program, and we had a presentation from HMMH on the basics of the flight quiet program, which is a voluntary flight quiet program, includes takeoff and departing flight procedure, as well as arrival, approach, landing procedure. The purposes of the voluntary flight quiet program are to encourage aircraft operators to fly quieter airplanes, to use quieter techniques, and to comply with procedures specific to a particular airport as it relates to takeoff, landings, and ground operation. The Roundtable role is voluntary flight quiet program is to concur with the program. Second, support and recognize airplane operators, monitor components of the voluntary flight quiet program, and to assure it meets the needs and request potential changes or updates to the program. Another agenda item was reported by the Airport Noise Office, which reported they are now tracking, as you heard from Mr. Ganong during his presentation, they are tracking nighttime flights which are not flying appropriate nighttime flight path, along with their finding as to the causation for using these flight paths. So I think this would kind of give us more understanding, not just the percentage of the flights that are complying, but also why are they not, and hopefully we could work with our partners to correct these issues of not complying with flying over water. Do any members of the roundtable have any questions on the technical working group report? I don't see any. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to, I don't see Member O'Connell here. She's not with us. Anybody else who was on the portable noise monitoring subcommittee meeting would like to present a report? I'm not sure, Kathleen, who was on that meeting. I was not in attendance, so.
I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. Then I don't have anything to report at this. Perhaps at the next meeting, Member O'Connell could give us a report on it. Moving on to Member Schneider, reporting on ground-based noise subcommittee. Member Schneider?
Thank you, Chair. The Ground-Based Noise Committee met a few weeks ago. Jean Rundell presented the findings from Seattle-Tacoma Airport ground-based noise study. Sadly, we can't read the study ourselves. It's still considered proprietary, but it looked at Seattle had 7 recommendations. Their neighborhood layout is a little bit different than ours, but they looked at engine run-ups, location barriers, time of day. They looked at the start of takeoff roll and how that might be reduced through the local closing communities by barriers or an intersection takeoff. They looked at reverse thrust upon arrival, something that I think hits Burlingame more than anybody else, especially along Rollins Road is where I hear it the most. They looked at taxi operations, possibly running the airlines or the airplanes on a single engine when they go out. They looked at queuing and sequencing of a time-based flow management. And Kathleen, I may have misremembered this, but I thought that this is where the FAA is currently developing software to reduce taxi and queuing. something called TBFM and MARS. I don't know a lot about that. And then the use of auxiliary power units, which are small jet engines, which the airplanes turn on at the gate, and they do their first set of instrument checks. More if as long as possible, they can stay on the airport's own power source as opposed to running APUs, reduces climate impacts, also reduces noise. And then a discussion of rolling takeoff that might be possible during the slower times of the day or night sessions on there. SFO's already done a couple of these. For example, we looked at the 3 locations, and it's in tonight's packet where the runoff locations are. They are about as far away from the close-in communities as they can be. That said, there are certain nights where I can hear them running 30 minutes or so, and my residents can hear them 30 minutes or so. One would only wish that they could be done during the day as opposed to nighttime. The ground-based noise committee may wish to investigate the feasibility of an intersection takeoff and to not use reverse thrust at nighttime. And typically those are runway 28 arrivals and rolling takeoffs. We then move to a discussion of the use of portable noise monitors in trying to find where the ground-based noise actually is. We had the spectral analysis study that did modeling and made some assumptions of which the airport was not happy with the assumptions, even though they were part of the team that created the design of the study. That said, we have a theory that noise is moving up certain canyons and certain valleys in there, but we don't have actual data for it. So the use of the portable monitors to try to figure out how low frequency noise is coming from the back or at a 45-degree angle off a jet engine and moving up the hillsides of predominantly Millbrae, Burlingame, and Hillsborough. So the goal would be to try to figure out and get some use of the portable monitors to collect some hard data on that. Aside from that, cities like mine will be looking at investing in our own. There is a limitation to just how much data San Francisco noise office can actually, what's the right word? Evaluate. I'm not sure, Jean, correct me with the right word. So there are some limiting in staffing time on that, but to get a better handle of where low frequency noise is going, and is it what the spectral analysis said, it's actually louder farther from the airport than our neighborhoods close into the airport. We also then moved into the FAA reauthorization, and thankfully, Chair Royce of the Legislative Committee was with us, and we talked about a number of issues. Al, I'm just going to read these off, but they might be in your notes. To create congressional, sorry, I've got a cold, congressional and FAA awareness of ground-based noise and impacts, urge the FAA to modify their metrics to fully address low-frequency noise, encourage the FAA to engage with engine manufacturers to design and build engines that address ways to lower or eliminate low-frequency noise and vibration, encourage the FAA to work with their academic partners to study and innovate ways to lessen the amount of low-frequency noise generated by engines and received by residents, and encourage the FAA to work with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, to modify noise certification standards to add an additional noise certification reference point behind the airplane on takeoff and to fully measure low frequency noise in this. I have to give a huge shout out to Kathleen and Angela who put together these notes because they were very technical. It was a great meeting. Sadly, it seems like no matter what we can come up with, there is no way to reduce anything. Even trying to reduce the queuing and the taxiing seems to be impossible given the layout of SFO. So it is incredibly frustrating. And Jean, I'm going to put you on the spot. I had asked Jean what other airports around the world are dealing with low frequency issues like ours. And Jean said that we are somewhat or incredibly unique given the fact that the way our runways are used, most runways have flights landing and arriving in a more 50-50 manner, and Jean, please correct me, so that they're taking into account low frequency noise. But at SFO, 79 to 81% on any given month of the departures are on runway 1, pointed right into Millbrae and Burlingame and Hillsborough. And there aren't the other flights to take into account the low frequency noise. So SFO is unique. And to me, putting that in really simple terms, that's why the impact that we feel is ignored, because there aren't other airports like us. There's nobody else talking about this. There's no other airport roundtable to say, let's stand together and work on this. And again, that adds to my incredible frustration on this. But Jean, could you explain it so the whole roundtable understands why we talk ground-based noise and nobody else is?
Let me, Member Schneider, let me, first of all, we're running over time, and perhaps that's something we could have Jean bring it in at the next meeting for us. Unless, Jean, if it is a minute or so, I have no problem, but if it is something that's extensive, I'd rather hold off till next meeting.
I can try really quickly here. The issue is that you have the unique situation where you don't have aircraft flying over these neighborhoods. You only have the aircraft departing from the runway, and so they don't also have overflights. If they had flights going over, then they would be in the contours because of due to that type of noise, where you don't have that. Even at San Diego, where it's a single direction runway, they still have arrivals coming over as well as the departures going over. And here you don't have the arrivals coming over and the departures taking off. Hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, if we need to expand on this, again, I'm happy to learn and have everybody learn more on this. Thank you, Member Schneider.
And I'll make a formal request, Chair, because I've been on the roundtable 7 years now, and ground-based noise gets maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes at any full roundtable, whereas we spend hours on GBAS and hours on NextGen, and almost nothing that affects people within hundreds of feet of the jet engines themselves, not thousands of feet, hundreds of feet. So yes, I would like more time at a future roundtable.
I understood. Thank you so much. But just for the record, I mean, my understanding, there's a subcommittee that deals extensively with the ground-based noise. But thank you again for your report and for your passion and for your advocacy. I really appreciate it. Moving on to the next subcommittee report, the Legislative Subcommittee with Vice Chair Royce. Vice Chair Royce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep this brief since we have not met since our last roundtable meeting. There's really no committee report to be made. I would only note that we are still in the process of gathering information, comments, questions for us to submit in terms of a letter for the FAA reauthorization. And I would commend Council Member Schneider for the points raised at her ground-based committee, in which she did provide us with 5 very specific recommendations. So we do thank you. You're all aware of the elections. There will be new committees, new chairs, et cetera. And until that all gets sorted out, we're sort of in a waiting game and see what next steps might be. But we are in the process of still gathering comments. So if you have any, please let us know. Thank you. Kathleen, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Mr. Royce, you covered it all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Royce. And let me go to the members. I apologize. I didn't ask if anyone have any questions for ground-based noise Chair Schneider. If you do have any questions, please raise your hand. Same thing for the Legislation Subcommittee as well. Okay, I don't see any. With that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to item number 9. Budget, fiscal year 2021-2022 budget versus actual. Ms. Wentworth?
Well, in fear of putting anyone to sleep, I'm going to keep this extremely brief. This is the typical procedure at the end of the fiscal year, although it's a little past the end, comparing the budgeted 21-22 with the actual 21-22. The good news is income was up slightly, expenses were down significantly, and we didn't touch the contingency roundtable fund. So we wound up having a real increase placed into the trust fund of about $22,000 during that fiscal year, due primarily to limited expenses during COVID and Zoom meetings that saved us from a lot of expenses. I can go into detail. The actuals versus the budget are on the attachment. But as I say, the bottom line is that we put $22,638 additional into the trust fund, and we're probably not going to see this kind of decrease in expenses in the future, as we'll be transitioning to in-person and going to conferences and taking field trips and all the other expenses that we didn't have over the last year. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathleen. I know we're running behind on time, but I think this is important. If you want to kind of, if you're able to, put the slide up and kind of go over it very briefly, very quickly, as far as the actual from budgeted.
Sure. Let me go to the, sorry. Angela, do you want to share your screen if you've got yours handy? I'm on a second computer here tonight, so I'm not. If you have it handy before I can get to it, go for it. Okay, page 54.
I trust we all looked at it and the packet. If anyone has any questions or comments on the budget, actual versus budgeted, please raise your virtual hand.
It's on page 54 of your packets if you're doing like I am and trying to see it.
Yeah, so it is on the screen.
Okay, great.
All right.
Angela, can you make it big for everybody? So revenue as expected from the Airport Commission was steady. We had a slight increase in Roundtable membership with Colma joining. East Palo Alto will show up in the next fiscal year. We had transition in the staffing and B expenses, transition in the staffing where Doreen was under contract rather than a county employee for the first half of this year. And due to using less hours, that actually saved some money. And so that was included. The actual 125 under the technical consultant actually includes Doreen's salary as well as Jean's or other person's salary. And the decrease in the County of San Mateo coordination is because we did not have a county employee as coordinator during the first half of this year. Under administration and operations, you can see that postage and printing and website went down. We had anticipated maybe enhancing the website more substantially, but that never happened this year. We're looking forward to doing that in the upcoming year. So that will go up to a higher number. The same with data storage and conference services. Office equipment, we didn't use any during the COVID times. Video services went down a little bit. And then in the projects programs department, we did not go to, coordinator did not go to any of the noise conferences. Two of the members went, but had remote registration and didn't have the usual transportation and hotel fees for that. So that's why that was a lower number. We did not take a TRACON field trip because of COVID. Airport noise report remained the same, as did the noise membership. Fly Quiet Awards, we gave the last one out, I believe, in 2018. And since we've had COVID for the past couple of years and numbers have been down, it's probably not necessary. But in the upcoming year, we will anticipate, now that we're back to somewhat full capacity at the airport, resuming our Fly Quiet Awards this fiscal year. And the reserve was not used. And as I say, we came out with a real increase of $22,638 for the year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wentworth. Anybody has any questions on the budget, actual versus budgeted? Okay, I don't see any. With that, thank you again, Kathleen. I'm going to go ahead and open it for public comments on the presentation, which is item 5 through 9. Ms. Montes.
Thank you, Chairman. And as a reminder, you may press *9 to indicate your desire to speak if you are calling by phone. And I do have one hand raised from Ms. Landesman. Give me 1 second. Ms. Landesman?
Thank you. This is about the technical working group meeting. At the last meeting, I made a comment that I also submitted in writing today, which is a request for you to ask the FAA about whether the recommendations that are made by the roundtable, the FAA told us, or told the broader community in July of 2021, that they're accepting community proposals, only the ones that have 100% consensus. And those are very few. For arrivals, for example, only the select committee proposals have 100% consensus. And it just seems like the FAA is acting arbitrarily here by telling communities we'll only take these proposals if everybody agrees. But then SFO is the layer in between that's deciding what it submits and what it doesn't submit. I don't think, since the federal resources that are being used to see if something is technically feasible or checking out to see what can be done to help whom and how, I don't think it's fair that these resources are being expended only for this channel via SFO, and that they're submitting recommendations that don't have 100% consensus. And so at the very minimum, I would just like to know the rules, because the FAA says one thing in July of 2021, but the actions that are being carried out by the roundtable are completely inconsistent with what the FAA stated at the time. And so again, I would just like to see if you're curious about the rules and so forth, because otherwise it just seems very disorganized and arbitrary. So I do look forward to learning more about how this is going to work out, because it hasn't in the past. All of these sort of procedural things don't work out very well for those who are not on the roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lansman. And let me just say thank you again for your comment and for sending your email. I intend to forward your question to the FAA. Hopefully we could get an answer to address your question. And the FAA is here today listening, but we will provide them with your written question as provided in your email. Okay, anybody else, Ms. Montes? I don't see any hands up.
That is correct, Chairman. Thank you. We do not have any virtual hands raised for presentation items.
Okay. Thank you. So let me take this moment and thank the public for their comments and for sharing their views and thoughts with us. Moving on to item number 10, member communications and announcement. Let me start by taking this opportunity to recognize member Michael O'Neill as he completes his 10 years on the Pacifica City Council, including his years as a member of the Roundtable. Member O'Neill, I remember from being here all the time. I missed few meetings, but it seems like you never missed any meetings. And if you did, you've always been engaged, and we appreciate all your time on the Roundtable, all your contribution, and all your service to the community. Member O'Neill, before being elected to the Pacifica City Council, he served on the Pacifica Planning Commission, 14 years on the board of the trustees for the Pacifica School District, and has a long history of community engagement. Mike has always been a steadfast Roundtable member throughout his time on the Roundtable, and we thank him for his years of service. Congratulations on quote unquote your retirement from the City Council, and we all wish you the best in your next chapter and whatever that takes you. Thank you again for your service. Thank you for being an active member on the Roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Thank you all. You're doing good work, and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything any members would like to share with us before we go ahead and adjourn this meeting? I don't see any hands up. Thank you again all for being here. Thank you for being patient with us as we face technical difficulties, jumping up and down the agenda. but I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to our staff. Thank you to the members of the public for joining us, and again, for sharing their opinion. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.